Today I'm going to tell you a story about a man who never planned to be a father, a little girl who just wanted someone to stay, and how family isn't born from blood, but from the choices we make day after day. A story filled with tears, laughter, and the quiet joy of simply being there. The hallway of Lincoln Elementary was chaos in pastels. Handmade posters, glitter-smeared construction paper, and half-deflated balloons framed the entrance to the auditorium like a child's idea of a red carpet. Children in paper crowns darted between folding chairs. Teachers herded them like sheep with clipboards and frantic smiles. And in the middle of it all stood Jake Tanner, grease still under his nails, arms crossed over a worn leather jacket, and a look on his face like someone had dragged him into a musical against his will, which technically they had. Jake was 40, single, and the owner of a modest auto shop off 9th and Willow. The kind of guy who fixed your transmission without judging your check engine light had been on for 6 months. He wasn't a fan of crowds, theater, or glitter, and yet here he was, because of a kid he didn't even know. It started when his neighbor, Miss Ellen, a sweet, nosy woman with a sharp cane and no boundaries, caught him outside checking his mailbox that morning. They need a man, just for a scene, to lift a little girl on his shoulders for the finale. 5 minutes, tops. Jake had laughed. She hadn't. And now here he was, staring at a folding chair with his name on a sticky note, "Stand-in Dad." He was about to turn and walk when a voice stopped him. "Are you my new dad?" Jake turned and froze. A girl, maybe 7, with messy curls and a chocolate stain on her sweater, was staring up at him. She had freckles, bright green eyes, and a hopeful tilt to her head that made Jake's chest do something weird. He cleared his throat. I guess, for the play?" The girl's eyes lit up. "I'm Lily." Jake blinked. "Okay." She nodded seriously. "My real dad couldn't come, but Miss Ellen said you might be strong enough to lift me. You look strong and tall." He glanced around. There were other kids with men in button-downs and shiny shoes. One dad had a Bluetooth in his ear and barely looked up from his phone. Jake looked back at Lily. She was watching him like he was the main event. Something inside him softened. "Yeah," he said finally, "I can do that." The scene came quickly. He stood behind her as she read her one line. She stumbled, looked back. Jake gave her a thumbs up. When her cue came, she turned, arms up. He lifted her. The crowd clapped. Lily waved. Jake didn't expect what happened next. As he set her down, she leaned close. "Can I keep you?" Jake laughed, a little too loudly. Then he saw her mother. In the crowd, to the side, still in scrubs, exhaustion under her eyes. She had dark hair pulled into a bun, a stain on her sleeve, and a hospital ID tag. Her name, Natalie Drew. Their eyes met for a second. She mouthed, "Thank you." Jake nodded. Didn't know what else to do. After the show, as the crowd thinned, Natalie approached him near the punch table. "I'm sorry," she said, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I didn't have anyone else. Ellen said you were kind." Jake rubbed the back of his neck. "I just showed up. Kid did all the work." Natalie smiled, tired, grateful. "Jake, right? Would you maybe be open to helping a little more? Just sometimes. I work double shifts. Lily doesn't have a lot of male figures." Jake hesitated. He didn't do kids. He didn't do emotional strings. But then Lily ran up and tugged his hand. "You were the best dad." And he heard himself say, "Sure, I could hang around." That night, Jake sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his phone. He hadn't told anyone, not even his sister, not even the guys at the shop. But in his jacket pocket was a folded piece of paper. A drawing. A stick figure man with a beard, holding hands with a little girl. Above them, in purple marker, "My new dad." The apartment complex was 3 stories of peeling paint and narrow hallways that smelled faintly of old soup and cheap disinfectant. Apartment 2C had a cracked welcome mat and a wind chime that jingled every time the door moved, which, for Jake, was already too cheerful. He'd been invited for dinner. Well, invited was a stretch. Natalie had said, "If you're going to help out, might as well start now. We have mac and cheese and 2 forks." He wasn't sure if it was a joke, but he showed up. Lily opened the door before he knocked. "You're late," she said, dead serious. "But I saved you the seat that doesn't wobble." She dragged him inside. The apartment was small but clean in a worn-out kind of way. There was a calendar on the fridge with work shifts in red pen, a coffee table stacked with medical textbooks, and a couch that had clearly seen better decades. The air smelled like cheese and laundry detergent. Natalie appeared from the kitchen, hair still damp from a quick shower, wearing a faded t-shirt that read, "Sleep is a myth." Jake held up a grocery bag. "I brought garlic bread, store-made. Don't get excited." She blinked, then gave him a smile that made something pinch in his chest. "Garlic bread counts as love around here." Dinner was chaotic. Lily talked non-stop about school, her friend Jasmine, who ate glue, her upcoming spelling test, and a cat she claimed was psychic. Natalie tried to eat and monitor pasta portions and remind Lily not to talk with her mouth full all at once. Jake just watched. There was something in the way Natalie cut Lily's food without thinking, how she brushed curls out of her eyes with her wrist, how she smiled even when clearly running on fumes. It was quiet chaos, tired love, real. When Lily darted off to her room for her important nighttime mission, Natalie started cleaning plates. "You don't have to do that," Jake said. She shrugged. "If I don't now, it'll still be here at 4 a.m. when I get home from the next shift." Jake took a towel and started drying. "You always this tired?" She laughed. "Only since giving birth." Then she glanced at him. "I mean it. Thanks for coming. I know this isn't your thing." Jake hesitated. "She's easy to like." "Yeah," Natalie said softly. "She's too good at that." Later, while Natalie took a call in the hallway from the hospital, Lily called Jake into her room. It was painted sky blue, stickers on the walls, stuffed animals lined up like tiny judges on a shelf, a cracked snow globe on the nightstand. Jake sat carefully on the edge of the bed. Lily knelt beside her desk, digging in a drawer. She pulled out a box and held it tightly. "Can I show you something?" He nodded. She opened it. Inside, folded papers, crayons, a Polaroid of a man Jake didn't recognize. Letters clumsy, with misspellings and tape on the edges. Jake picked one up, read, "Dear Dad, I hope you're good. I'm 7 now. I got a B+ in math. Do you still like dogs? Please write me." He looked up. Lily's voice was small. "I send one every month to his old address, but they keep coming back." Jake swallowed. "He left when I was a baby," she said, "but maybe he just got lost." Jake's throat burned. He folded the letter carefully, put it back. Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. "I just want to know if he remembers me." Jake didn't speak, because something in him knew. That man wasn't coming back. The alarm clock buzzed at 6 a.m. Jake groaned. He was on Natalie's couch, his back already regretting the decision. A blanket that smelled like lavender and macaroni was tangled around his legs. Somewhere in the kitchen, a coffee pot sputtered like an old lawnmower. He rubbed his face. He'd offered to help just one morning since Natalie had a double shift and no backup. It had seemed simple the night before. Now, he was questioning every life choice. "Rise and shine." Lily appeared in full unicorn pajamas, dragging a hairbrush like a sword. Jake blinked. "How are you this awake?" "I've been up since 5:17, she said proudly. "I like mornings. You can't mess anything up yet." He grunted and shuffled to the kitchen. Burnt toast smoke already filled the air. The next hour was chaos. Lily refused to wear socks with itchy seams, spilled cereal twice, and insisted on bringing 3 stuffed animals for support. Jake couldn't find her backpack, then realized it was already on her back. He almost used dish soap instead of shampoo. By the time they reached the school drop-off line, his shirt was stained with something pink, and Lily was lecturing him about peanut allergies. He parked crooked, unbuckled her seatbelt, then paused. Lily had something in her hand, a white envelope. Jake frowned. "What's that?" She stuffed it in her coat. "Nothing." He crouched to her level. "Lily." Her shoulders sagged. "It's just another letter," she muttered. "I was going to put it in the mailbox on the way. I didn't want you to see." Jake took a breath. "You want to send it anyway?" She nodded. He might read this one. Jake looked at the envelope, the handwriting, the tiny heart over the I. He didn't have the heart to take it away. "Okay," he said softly, "but next time maybe we write it together." Lily's face lit up. "Really?" He nodded. "Really?" As she skipped toward the school door, Jake turned and nearly walked into a thick-set man in a brown uniform. "Double parked," the man said gruffly. "Again." Jake frowned. "I've never parked here before." "You're not her real dad, are you?" Jake froze. "Excuse me." "I've seen her mom. You're not him." The man's eyes were flat, judging. "Kids don't need confusion, just saying." Jake clenched his jaw, then glanced at Lily, who was waving from the doorway. He forced a smile. "You're right," he said. "I'm not her dad." Then he looked the man in the eye. "But maybe I'm showing up, and that counts for something." Back at the shop, Jake sat in his office, staring at a crumpled envelope on the desk. Lily had dropped it by accident before school. He hadn't meant to read it. But his eyes had caught the words. "Dear Dad, I miss you even though I don't know you. Jake is helping. He's not you, but he tries. That's almost better." Jake folded the letter, and something in him changed. The auditorium was too warm and smelled like waxed floors and cafeteria pizza. Jake adjusted his crooked paper badge, Lily's guest, and tried not to wrinkle his shirt any more than it already was. Natalie stood against the back wall, arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the little wooden stage like she expected something to go wrong. "She didn't let me read it," she whispered. "She just said it wasn't done until today." Jake nodded. He didn't say what he felt, a strange mix of pride, fear, and something he didn't quite have a name for. Up front, Miss Dana, the teacher, clapped to get the room quiet. "Welcome to Family Letter Night. Tonight, each student will share a letter they wrote to someone special, someone who made them feel seen." One by one, kids climbed the steps to the stage. A boy read to his grandma, who always packed him the good cookies. A girl cried while reading a letter to her mom, who was working out of state. Another kid read to a pet turtle, describing their adventures in the backyard. People smiled, laughed, some cried. Then Miss Dana called. Lily drew. Lily stepped on stage in her pink sneakers, holding a folded sheet of notebook paper in both hands. She looked smaller than usual. Braver, too. She took a deep breath and spoke into the microphone. "This is my letter to someone who didn't have to be there, but was." She unfolded the paper. It trembled a little in her fingers. Then she read, "Dear Jake, you're not my real dad, but you came to my school. You lifted me up. You made weird toast and tied my shoes wrong, but you let me try again. You don't live here, but you stayed late when Mom was tired. You don't know how to braid hair, but you tried. I used to write letters to someone who never answered, but now I write to you, Ziggy. You are here. That's what matters. Love, Lily." The room was silent. Someone sniffled in the front row. A woman covered her mouth. A man wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Even Miss Dana looked away for a second, blinking. Jake sat frozen. Then Lily folded the letter, gave a small curtsy, and walked off the stage like nothing had happened. Natalie didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Jake looked at her and saw it in her eyes. This wasn't pretend anymore. The apartment felt different that night. Not quieter, heavier. Like the space itself knew something had shifted. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching the folded letter like it still mattered. Natalie sat across from Jake, both of them holding mugs they barely touched. A lamp hummed softly. Outside it rained slow, steady, like the city had exhaled. She used to write those letters like spells, Natalie said. As if she just said the right thing, he'd come back. Jake watched the steam rise from his cup. She doesn't do that anymore. Natalie nodded. Because someone stayed. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. And maybe that was the most dangerous part. It was starting to feel like home. A knock came at midnight. Not loud, but sharp. Natalie opened the door a crack, then froze. "Derek." The man smiled like he owned the room already. Messy hair, travel bag, the familiar scent of trouble. Jake stood behind her, tense. "I'll crash a night or two," Derek said. "Couch okay?" Natalie didn't answer, just stepped aside. Jake watched him enter like a storm that no one asked for. Later in the hallway, Jake asked quietly, "You trust him?" Natalie hesitated, then exhaled. "He's my brother. He comes and goes whenever he feels like it. I don't trust him. But he's family, and sometimes I don't have the energy to fight family." and Jake realized for the first time how alone she really was. Morning. Jake flipped pancakes badly. Lily devoured them anyway, legs swinging from the chair. Uncle Derek's still sleeping, she said, nose wrinkled. He talks in his sleep about boats. Jake laughed, but Lily didn't. She hesitated, then leaned closer. He wrote me. Jake froze. Who? She didn't blink. My real dad. He found my message online, and he wants to meet. Jake stood in the hallway, listening to the low voices coming from Lily's room. Her door was cracked open. Natalie sat on the edge of the bed, brushing tangles from Lily's curls. Her voice was soft, but every few seconds, Jake heard it. When, not y'all, if. When you see him. When he arrives. When? Jake didn't know why that word hit so hard. Later in the kitchen, he stood staring at the toaster, watching the bread go from golden to black. Natalie came in, rubbing her arms. He messaged again, she said. Wants to meet this weekend, just lunch, public place, nothing big. Jake didn't answer. She stepped closer. You think it's a bad idea? I think, Jake said slowly, you don't know what you're opening. She leaned against the counter, tired. He says he's sober now, says he's changed. Jake turned to her. And you believe him? Natalie didn't meet his eyes. I believe Lily wants to. That night, Jake sat on the couch, alone. Derek was in the other room, feet on the table, eating chips like it was his house. Natalie was asleep, or pretending to be. The letter sat in Jake's hand again, the one Lily had read on stage. He unfolded it. Read it again. You are here, that's what matters. But now, someone else might be. Saturday came too fast. Lily wore a dress with yellow flowers. Her hands kept smoothing the hem. Natalie checked her watch again and again. Jake offered to drive, but Natalie said it might be better, just the two of them. He nodded. He understood. But as he knelt down to help Lily tie her shoe, she looked at him and whispered, Will you be here when we come back? Jake's throat caught. Oh, I'll be here, he said, smiling, even if it's just in the kitchen, burning toast. She giggled, but when the door closed behind them, the silence that followed felt like something had ended. And Jake sat at the table, staring at the second mug of tea. He had no one to hand to. The call came mid-afternoon. Jake was in the garage, hands deep in the hood of a sputtering sedan, when his phone buzzed on the workbench. One glance at the screen, Natalie. He wiped his fingers on a rag before answering. She's home, Natalie said. Her voice was steady, too steady. It's done. There was silence on both ends. Jake didn't ask what she meant by done. He felt it in his chest. He came by that evening, just as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, spilling gold through the windows of apartment 2C. Natalie met him at the door with a tired nod. She didn't smile, but she didn't stop him either. The air in the apartment felt like the aftermath of a summer storm, thick, quiet, and slightly off. Lily was on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, wearing the same yellow-flowered dress from the morning. Her hair was undone, the bow discarded on the floor beside her. She didn't look up when he walked in. Jake hesitated, but Natalie touched his arm gently. She asked if you'd come, she whispered. He stepped in. sat slowly on the edge of the couch. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The cartoons flickered on mute across the screen, but Lily wasn't watching them. Finally, in a voice no louder than a breath, she said, "He brought me a toy, still had the price sticker on it." Jake stayed quiet. He smelled like the bus station. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. He didn't ask about me, not really. Just told stories about himself, like I was just there. Jake swallowed. He wanted to say 100 things, but none of them would fix it. Lily turned toward him slowly. "You ever pretend someone's gonna be amazing, like magic, and then they're just regular and kind of mean?" He nodded. "I have." She looked at him a long moment, then reached out and slid her hand into his. "You're not magic," she murmured. Jake smiled, small and sad. "Nope. But you're not mean either." That silence, that gentle, heavy silence, said more than anything else. When Jake left that evening, the hallway was dim and still. But inside, something quiet had shifted. Not because she stopped believing in the man she'd imagined, but because she had started believing in someone real. The garage was full, and Jake tried to bury himself in the noise engines humming, wrenches clanking, the radio mumbling something about weekend traffic. He kept his head down, hands busy, sleeves rolled, heart somewhere else entirely. He hadn't seen Lily in 3 days. Not since the talk on the couch, not since she slid her hand into his and sat there like that silence meant safety. He told himself they needed space. He told himself it was for the best. He didn't believe a word of it. Late afternoon. The bell over the shop door chimed, sharp and cold. Jake looked up from under a hood and froze. The man standing in the entrance was taller than he expected. Lean, clean shirt, cheap shoes, a practiced smile. The same face he'd seen in Lily's drawings, a little older, a little harder. "I'm looking for Jake," he said, like he already knew. Jake wiped his hands slowly. "That's me." The man didn't offer his name. "You've been spending time with my daughter." Not a question, a statement. A warning in the shape of words. Jake didn't blink. "She's a great kid." The man stepped closer. "Look, I don't know who told you it's your place to step in, but it's not. I'm her father." Jake felt something coil in his stomach. Not fear, not anger. Disgust. "You're late," he said quietly. "Years late." The man's jaw tensed. "You think buying groceries and playing hero makes you family? You're a mechanic." Jake didn't move. "No," he said, "but I show up. And maybe that's what she needed." The man stepped closer, shoulders tight. And just as Jake felt the heat rise behind his ribs, the door opened again. Natalie. Hair in a messy braid, scrubs still on, face pale, eyes sharp. She froze for half a second, then walked straight between them. "Stop." The man turned. "Natalie." "No," she said firmly. "Don't talk to him. And don't come here thinking you can intimidate people just because you suddenly remembered you have a daughter." Jake backed away. He didn't want to be the reason this turned worse. But before he reached the office door, Natalie turned to him. Her voice softened. "Jake." He paused. "I didn't know he'd come find you." Jake nodded. "I figured." heartbeat of silence. "He's not staying," she added. Jake wanted to ask if she meant the visit, or in their lives. But he didn't. He just nodded again, and walked out the back. That night, he didn't go to their apartment. He sat in his truck outside for a while, watching the light in Lily's window. Then, quietly, he drove away. Because sometimes the hardest thing wasn't leaving. It was not knowing if you'd be allowed to come back. The next few days passed like a film Jake had seen too many times. Everything moved, but nothing touched him. He went to work, turned wrenches, took calls, and laughed at jokes that didn't land. But all of it felt like watching his own life from behind glass. He didn't go by the apartment. He didn't text Natalie. He didn't ask about Lily. He thought he was doing the right thing, giving space, being respectful, staying in his lane. And yet, every time he closed the shop at night and walked to his truck, he felt the same hollow pause in his chest. A question without words. Was that it? It was Thursday afternoon when she walked in. The bell above the garage door gave a soft jingle, out of place among the hissing hydraulics and grease-stained floor mats. Jake looked up, half expecting a delivery. But it was Lily. She wore a jean jacket 2 sizes too big and pink sneakers with scuffed toes. Her backpack bounced against her back as she marched straight up to him, like she owned the place. Jake froze, then set down the wrench in his hand. "Lily?" She nodded once, serious, focused, then held out a folded piece of paper. "I didn't mail this one," she said. "It wasn't for him." He took it from her slowly, his fingers brushing her ears. "Can I read it now?" She shrugged. "It's yours." Jake wiped his hands on a rag, sat on the step near the wall, and unfolded the page. The handwriting was messy, uneven, but familiar. "Dear Jake, you didn't come for me first, but you came back. That counts. When I felt small, you made me tall, not just on your shoulders, in real life, too. When you left, I thought maybe I was too much. Maybe you got tired. Now I think maybe you were scared. That's okay, I get scared too. But I still wait. I hope you come back. I still have toast to burn with you. Love, Lily." Jake stared at the letter for a long time, holding it like it might vanish if he blinked. He didn't feel worthy of the words on that page, didn't feel big enough to carry the trust she had poured into them. Lily sat beside him on the concrete step, quiet, picking at the scuffed toes of her sneakers. "Finally," he whispered. "I didn't know what I was allowed to be." She looked up at him, her eyes calm, unflinching. "You're allowed to stay." Later that evening, Jake stood in front of their building again. He hadn't meant to come, but his feet led him there like they remembered something he had tried to forget. This time he didn't knock. The door was already open. Natalie stood there, leaning against the frame, no words ready, but none needed. Her eyes were softer than they'd been in weeks. He stepped closer, uncertain. "I don't want to confuse her." Natalie shook her head. "She's not confused. She knows exactly who shows up. That's more than most kids get." Jake looked past her to the hallway where Lily's laughter echoed faintly. Natalie stepped aside. "You hungry?" He nodded. She smiled. "Then come in. There's toast." And Jake, for the first time, stepped over the threshold without wondering if he belonged. Because now He did. Morning came with the scent of burnt toast and something like peace. Jake had arrived early, saying he was just passing by, but somehow ended up making breakfast while Natalie ran late from her night shift. Lily sat at the table, swinging her legs and smearing jelly over everything she could reach. But it was messy, loud, imperfect, and it felt right. Natalie stepped out of the bathroom, hair still damp, tugging on her coat. She looked at Jake standing over the stove in a wrinkled shirt, hair sticking up in every direction. She smiled without meaning to. "Ah, you always this good at showing up?" Jake glanced back with a shrug. "Only when it matters." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced down, her face shifted immediately. "It's the school." Jake tensed. "Everything okay?" She read in silence for a moment, then looked up. Lily got into a fight. They sat in tiny plastic chairs in the assistant principal's office, surrounded by construction paper posters and motivational slogans. Lily sat between them, head lowered, arms crossed. Across the room sat another boy, older and smug, with a red mark blooming under his eye. His mother whispered furiously in his ear, occasionally glaring at Lily like she'd bitten someone. The assistant principal, a soft-spoken man with large glasses, adjusted his folder. "It appears the incident began after a comment made by Marcus." Natalie looked sharply toward the boy. "What kind of comment?" The man hesitated, then read aloud. "He said, and I quote, 'That's not your real dad. He probably just feels sorry for you.'" Jake felt his entire body go still. Lily's voice broke the silence. "I told him he doesn't get to say that," she said, staring straight ahead. "Because Jake shows up. Every time. And that's what dads do." Natalie reached for her daughter's hand gently. The assistant principal cleared his throat. "There will be no suspension, but perhaps a conversation at home would help." Later, walking back to the truck, Natalie looked over at Jake. She hit him, you know." Jake smiled slightly. He had it coming. Natalie laughed, then sighed. "She's never fought for anyone before." He looked at her. "I've never had anyone fight for me either." They stopped at the corner. The light changed. Jake didn't move. "I never thought this would happen," he said quietly, "that I'd care this much." Natalie didn't answer right away. Then softly, "I think I stopped hoping someone would, and then you did." For a long moment, the city moved around them, busy and loud and uncaring. But in that quiet corner, they both stood still and let something shift again. Something real. It arrived on a Monday in a plain white envelope with no return address, the kind that meant formality, not warmth. Natalie had found it wedged between junk mail and a grocery flyer, and for a moment she almost threw it out, until she saw the name in the corner. Lily Drew. She didn't open it right away. She waited until Jake had come by in the evening, until Lily was coloring quietly on the floor, and the kitchen was filled with the soft hum of ordinary life. Natalie slid the envelope across the table. "I think you should read this." Jake frowned, opened it slowly, read, then read it again. When he looked up, his face had changed. "He's filing," Jake said. "He's asking for shared custody." Natalie nodded, hands wrapped around her mug like it might anchor her to the floor. I don't know what to do." Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "Does she know?" Natalie shook her head. "Not yet." But Lily did know. They found her later, curled up in her room with the envelope crumpled in her hand, staring at the ceiling like she was somewhere else entirely. She didn't cry. That was the part that scared Natalie most. Jake didn't sleep that night. He showed up the next day after work, not with tools or jokes or toast, but with something heavier in his chest. He found Lily in her room, sitting cross-legged on her bed, folding paper into tiny triangles like she was trying to shrink the world. "Hey," he said gently. She didn't look up. He sat on the edge of the bed. "I heard about the letter." Still no response. So he did the only thing he hadn't tried. "I didn't know my dad," he said. "Not really. He left before I could say my first word." Lily froze. Her fingers stopped folding. "My mom worked nights. I ate a lot of cereal. Got good at fixing broken stuff because no one else did." He paused. "I used to watch dads at school plays, holding signs, carrying bags. I told myself I didn't care." He looked at her finally. "But I did. A lot." Lily's voice came, small and unsure. "So what happened?" Jake smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I grew up, learned to show up for other people, still learning." She looked at him now, really looked. "You think he's doing this because he wants to be here?" Jake was honest. "I think he wants to feel better about not being here before." She swallowed. "But what if the judge says yes?" Jake placed a hand over her. "Then we deal with it, together." She nodded slowly. "Together's good." And for the first time since the envelope arrived, she leaned her head on his shoulder and just breathed. The legal office smelled like paper, old carpet, and tired decisions. Natalie sat in the hallway outside the glass door marked Family Law Division, her coat balled up in her lap, hands cold despite the spring sun. Jake paced near the vending machine, holding 2 untouched cups of coffee. Inside, Lily was speaking. She had asked to go in alone. That part had surprised everyone, even the court-appointed representative, a middle-aged woman with soft eyes and a voice like wind through leaves. But Lily had looked her in the eye and said very clearly, "I don't want anyone else to tell my story." Now, all Natalie and Jake could do was wait. The day before, Natalie had met with the lawyer alone. She had come prepared for battle lists, messages, attendance records, therapy notes, but the lawyer, a calm man in a brown sweater, had shaken his head. "He has no history with her," he said. "No school visits, no medical presence. But if this goes to court, they will ask what the child wants." Natalie blinked. "She's only 7. He nodded. "And she already knows who shows up." That night she sat with Jake on the fire escape, watching the street below. "I don't want to put that weight on her," she said. "It feels wrong." Jake was quiet for a long time. Then finally, "Maybe. But not asking might be worse. She's already carrying it. Let her put it down in her own words." Now they sat in silence while Lily's voice, faint but steady, carried through the glass. "I know who he is," she said. "The one who wrote the letter." The woman nodded gently. "Do you want to live with him?" There was a pause. Then Lily's voice again. No. Can you tell me why? Lily spoke slowly, like she was walking across a thin rope of words. Because he doesn't know what I like. He never made me breakfast. He never waited outside dance class. He doesn't know how I cry when I'm mad. A pause. But Jake does. There was a rustle of papers. The woman's voice was warm. That's all I needed to hear. When Lily came out, she looked tired but proud. She walked straight to Natalie and hugged her tight. Then she turned to Jake, reached for his hand, and smiled. I did good, right? Jake crouched beside her. You did better than good. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. But when they left the building and stepped into the sun, it felt like more than just another day. It felt like a door had opened. And Lily had walked through it, on her own. The letter came on a Thursday. This one wasn't cold or formal, no stamped label or plastic window, just a plain envelope, handwritten name, and a soft weight that felt less like threat, more like closure. Natalie opened it with steady hands, though her heart beat like she was 17 again, waiting for a college acceptance letter. Jake stood in the kitchen holding 2 mugs, one for her, one for the quiet moment they both hoped was coming. She read the letter once, then again, then exhaled. He lost, she said simply. Jake blinked. What? The petition's been denied, she clarified, looking up. No visitation, no shared custody. The court doesn't see a reason. They listened to Lily. For a second, no one moved. Then Jake set down the mugs, walked over, and pulled her into a long, relieved hug, the kind that doesn't ask permission, because the answer is already in how tightly 2 people breathe again. From the hallway, a voice called. Can I show him now? Natalie turned. Yes, baby, come on. Lily padded into the room, holding something behind her back. She looked nervous, like someone presenting a science fair project that only mattered to one person. She handed it to Jake, a folder made from construction paper, folded and stapled, her name on the front in purple crayon. Inside were drawings. The first was of 3 stick figures, one tall with a beard, one with long curly hair, and a tiny one in a bright yellow dress. Underneath she'd written, Me, Mama, and Jake, who burns toast but still makes the best eggs. The next page was a heart, crooked and red, but filled with tiny things. A wrench, a tire, a spatula, and surprisingly a hand holding another. On the last page, just a sentence. Families are made out of people who stay. Jake didn't say anything. He just knelt down, pulled her into his arms, and let her wrap around him like she'd been doing it all her life. That night, as Lily slept, Natalie stood beside Jake on the balcony. The spring air smelled like grass and distant rain. She looked at him, and for once, he didn't look away. I used to think love came all at once, she said softly, like lightning, loud, bright. She paused. But I think maybe it's this instead. Quiet, daily. Someone who shows up even when it's messy. Jake turned to her. I don't know if I know how to do this right. You're already doing it, she said. And then, like it had waited long enough, she leaned in and kissed him. Not because of gratitude. Not because he filled a gap. But because somewhere between toast and tire changes, he had become something real. The gym smelled like dust and crayons and something vaguely lemon-scented from the janitor's overachieving mop. Parents filled the folding chairs, shifting and murmuring, the air warm with spring and pride. Jake sat near the back, knees awkwardly close to the row in front of him, his shirt ironed for once, hands clutching a paper program that had already been folded and refolded twice. On stage, a microphone stood too tall for most of the second graders who approached it, papers shaking in their hands as they read. My hero is my grandma. My hero is my cat. My hero is the lady who makes lunch. Each one brought laughter, claps, polite smiles. Then a name was called. Lily Drew. She walked up slowly, hair braided, a yellow ribbon around her wrist. Her paper trembled, but her voice didn't. My hero, she began, is someone who didn't know he was supposed to be one. Jake sat a little straighter. He doesn't wear a cape. He wears oil-stained shirts. He burns toast. A lot. Light laughter. He doesn't fight dragons, but he fixed my bike, and he taught me how to check the tire pressure, and he always shows up. She looked up from the page. Even when it's raining, even when he doesn't have to. Silence. Then soft applause. She stepped down, eyes searching the room, and when they found Jake, she smiled. Not big, not dramatic. Just the kind of smile you give to someone who stayed. Later, outside, as parents mingled and kids spilled onto the lawn, Lily ran to him and tucked her hand into his. I didn't say your name, she whispered. Jake looked down. I noticed. She grinned. That's 'cause everyone already knows who you are. And Jake, a man who'd once thought he had nothing to offer, just knelt, wrapped his arms around her, and held on. Because in the end, it wasn't about being perfect. It was about being there and staying, always. What do you think who is a true hero for a child? Leave a comment. What does family mean to you, and who would you call your hero? We'd love to hear your stories.